Now, there are a few challenges which our Constitution now demands. Public participation, stakeholder consultation. It's a very serious issue. It was not there before in the Constitution, but now it's there. If you don't go through that process, the many wise Kenyans will take you to court and put a petition there and halt you in your tracks, because the law now demands that there must be stakeholder consultations. So these are processes that we cannot circumvent, we cannot run away from. We have to deal with them. However, the thing I want to say that we have not cracked, and we need to figure out how to crack it as a society, is that we must also be conscious of the cost that it takes to come up with legislation. And we all need to work together. The departments that are generating the piece of legislation, Parliament that has got to be at the forefront in public participation, the various stakeholders. We have been scrutinizing through the parliamentary department a situation where a recommendation comes to you, and the proposal in that document is that for us to prepare this document and then have it go through the various stages, and then it is tabled and it becomes law, we have seen what I call extremely scary financial proposals. Sometimes you find a department saying that it will cost 100 million to develop this piece of legislation from A to Z. A. Tafadhali. Tafadhali wa Kenya. And our departments, please. In a situation where we have a challenge financially, it does not make sense. Even if you are in better times, it does not make sense that to incubate a piece of legislation and then get it to the level where it is now accented to, that it costs the taxpayer 100 million shillings. Hapana, hapo tunawadhulumu wa Kenya. We need to step back where we can go through these processes, but not at a cost. If it means that, let's say we take only 10 pieces of legislation, if we assume that that figure is accurate, then it means that to do 10 pieces of legislation, it would cost the taxpayer 1 billion shillings. That is not credible. And it would be immoral for us to go through that kind of thing. So I want us collectively to think through this very carefully so that we moderate the cost of developing that legislation. Because you must always ask yourself, how many people would you provide with tap water with a cost of 100 million Kenya shillings? How many last connectivity people would you put on the electric grid with that figure? How many hospitals would you be able to supply sufficient medicine to with that kind of figure? So if you compare that and if you put it in your mind, and then you ask yourself, is it therefore morally possible that we should spend 100 million shillings or 50 million shillings to develop a legislation against these needs of our people? It's a rhetorical question. It's up to you to reflect. and those who are listening to us on this particular issue. The assented laws are crucial in the management of public finances, budget support, and in anchoring the government's plan for various sectors including climate change, universal health care, affordable housing, sugar, and water, just to mention a few. Further, we have also developed 19 national policies which are under implementation, 5 of which have received parliamentary approval as sessional papers. We have also cleared 82 statutory instruments for implementation. This has boosted regulatory efforts in key sectors including public finance and tax administration, capital markets, shipping and maritime affairs, wildlife, agriculture, refugee management, anti-money laundering and combating terrorism financing, energy and petroleum, land management and administration, public works, health, roads, and transport. At this juncture, allow me to appreciate Parliament through its leadership present for being a key partner in these processes. The executive has regularly called upon you to exercise your constitutional lawmaking function to support government proposals. We also value our continued partnership with Parliament's leadership in navigating representation and oversight issues such as the administration of question time and the general responsiveness of the executive to parliamentary business and inquiries. It is against this background that I have reflected on the State Department strategic plan and find it fit for purpose of the planning period 2023 to 2027. This plan comes at an opportune time when Kenya is experiencing interesting dynamics, including increased awareness and interest of our youth in the affairs of our country. We are also confronted by serious misinformation and disinformation about government policies, projects, and programs. Ladies and gentlemen, through the legislative agenda, we have a responsibility to enhance the engagement of stakeholders and citizens in policy and legislation-making processes to make them appreciate the government's intentions and expectations. We also value partnerships and collaboration that will enable us to achieve the full potential and benefits envisaged under this plan. The State Department, working closely with agencies in the policy and lawmaking space, should ensure that citizens and stakeholders are presented with the real and unadulterated intents of our policy and legislative proposals. Let me conclude by assuring you of my steadfast support during the implementation of this strategic plan. Our overarching goal should be to see these proposals contribute to Kenya's socioeconomic transformation and the lasting prosperity of all Kenyans. I am confident that we shall reap the benefits of the efforts of all those who contributed to the development of this strategic plan. Together, we can deliver policies and legislation that will enhance our country's national development agenda. It is now my great pleasure to declare the State Department for Parliamentary Affairs Strategic Plan for the period 2023 to 2027 officially launched. Let's take Parliament seriously. Let us take Parliament seriously. This is why the President, in his wisdom, decided to have a State Department for Parliamentary Affairs. He was sending a signal that all government officers, all public officers, must take Parliament seriously. So when officers develop questions, or respond to questions rather, on behalf of the ministry and what have you, take it seriously. Do your research properly and inform your minister or your principal secretary, whoever is going to appear before the committee, inform them appropriately and develop honest positions. If you think it's a bother, and the State Department has done a good job training officers on how to respond. They've done quite a bit. They've trained quite a number in all the departments, and we need to train more so that they can help the various departments to respond to parliamentary issues better. But if you think it's a problem, try and imagine yourself when the Gen Z were in the streets, to now go and respond to them. Parliament is offering you a structured opportunity to respond to matters of the state, of the people, in a structured approach, to respond in a measured way, to give a thorough response so that they can understand. Those are the people's representatives. You are getting an opportunity. Now, if you don't respond appropriately, will you respond to a crowd in the streets? Which is better? Which gives you the better opportunity? Obviously, to do a thorough job and respond to Parliament effectively. Otherwise, if you don't, then you know what happens. Tutakuwa na shida huko nje. If you have never been in politics, the most difficult thing is to try and address a crowd that is angry. To try and make logic out of something when they're angry. It's a very difficult thing. Pray that you are never found there. So let us respect Parliament, and then we can respond to it, the issues they raise effectively as we go forward. We are happy that there's now a record of the legislative pieces we work on. When they were preparing, the department was preparing, they invited various sectoral groups from different departments, and one of the things we found through the Department of Parliamentary Affairs was that there were cases where there were multiple departments of government legislating for the same thing. So many, all legislating for the same thing. So through this department, an attempt, a fairly good attempt, has been made to rationalize that kind of duplicity. But it's not complete. But it is also shocking. I've talked of departments, but what was more shocking is that we also came across situations where in the same department, different sections were also literally working at cross purposes, all trying to evolve a piece of legislation and not knowing that the person next door in the same building, on the same floor, is also at it. So there was a question in the departments, but that would be what? Inter, isn't it? And then there was confusion also in the intra. At home, at the base, you find this confusion. in the legislation that was being developed. So these are issues that cost money, they cost time, they force us not to be able to deliver to the community and to the people who voted the government in. So we must correct this. And ultimately, as I said, we must be cost conscious. It is a great pleasure for me to preside over the launch of the State Department for Parliamentary Affairs Strategic Plan for the years 2023 to 2027. I joined the Principal Secretary for Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Aurelia Rono, in expressing our excitement for delivering this inaugural strategic plan for the State Department. This is yet another first under my portfolio. As I presided over the launch of the strategic plan for the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, which was another first, right here on September 30th, 2024. You may recall that when the State Department of Parliamentary Affairs was established, the PS was the only staff member. Working together, we went through the extraordinary process of operationalizing the department, anchored on Executive Order Number 1 of January 2023. This process has now matured, as you have seen from the presentation on the structure and commitments of the department, which we started from scratch. Let us appreciate PS Rono and her entire team for the heavy lifting and legwork they have endured to deliver a living document that will shape the government's legislative agenda. The establishment of this State Department embraces His Excellency President William Ruto's vision of an institutionalized approach to matters relating to the government legislative agenda and day-to-day relations with Parliament. This is a paradigm shift that presents the government with a holistic bird's eye view of its entire portfolio of policy and legislative proposals that activate the national development aspirations. It is crucial. It is a crucial plank that assists in evidence-based decision-making and an opportunity to address impending challenges in a more structured manner. It has also assisted the government to manage the intricacies of policy and lawmaking, which need to be synchronized to deliver products that truly speak to the needs of Mwananchi and on time. This includes engaging and involving stakeholders in the development process and the constitutional, statutory, and administrative imperatives of the journey towards the envisaged outcomes. Evidence of the achievements we have made as an administration in just under 2 years is overwhelming. This includes enacting. Earlier it was 35 bills, but today the President has assented to another 7, so that brings it to 42, becoming law. When the government was being formed after the election and the department was established, Madam Rono was operating from the corridors of the 10th floor in Treasury Building. That is actually where she was. There were no offices. She was in the corridors, giving her directions from there. And then she graduated to sharing space with another PS, 2 other PSs in fact, and her officers, sharing space, trying to put things together until where we have reached. So it's not an understatement, it's a very serious message. And what I saw in her and her team was not about the space to operate from, but I saw determination and the will to serve the people of Kenya. So I must commend you for that perseverance, that resilience, and the patience, because we were setting up and the physical situation has been quite dire, and it remains so. Some of you will recall I kept on telling you that for us to start seeing the ship turning, it may take at least 2 to 3 years before you start seeing a turnaround in the state of the economy. I kept on repeating this, and it was not going to be easy. People thought it was a joke. To turn around an economy is not instant coffee. It is a process. And we are still in that process, so that the results can be done. When you say it's instant coffee, you are completely misleading the people. For instance, when a piece of legislation, a facilitative piece of legislation, is taken to Parliament so that they can create the necessary legal framework, you do not expect Parliament to rubber stamp it. Parliament has got its processes, its procedure, and they have to analyze the piece of legislation because they represent people. So in the process, that piece of legislation has got to take its time until it matures from that Parliament. So you cannot wake up and just expect that you can run away with anything, as we used to say when we were young, if wishes were horses or whatever. You have to appreciate that there's a legal framework that has to be followed.